The invitation arrived on cream-colored paper, the kind that whispered money and status with every fiber. Maya Lopez held it between her fingers in the cramped studio apartment that had become her world, reading the elegant script that announced the Marketing Excellence Awards Gala. 6 months ago, she would have been presenting at this event. Now she was lucky to afford the $50 ticket to attend as a guest. She set the invitation on the fold-out table that served as her desk, kitchen counter, and dining surface. All at once, the late afternoon light streaming through the single window caught the gilded edges, mocking her with memories of when she'd helped design similar invitations for their agency's events. Their agency, the words still stung, even in her thoughts. There was no there anymore. There was only Ethan's agency, Ethan's success, Ethan's carefully crafted narrative about the unstable ex-wife who'd held him back. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Maya's phone buzzed against the table. A text from her mother. Mija, are you eating? You sound thin on the phone. Carmen Lopez had a way of hearing weight loss through cellular towers, a maternal superpower Maya had never quite understood. She typed back quickly, I'm fine, Mom. Just busy with work stuff. It wasn't entirely a lie. Surviving was work, even if it didn't pay the bills. The black dress hanging on the back of her bathroom door seemed to mock her too. She'd bought it 2 years ago for a client celebration, back when she could afford designer labels without checking her bank balance 3 times. Now it would have to serve as armor for tonight's expedition into the battlefield of Chicago's marketing elite. 3 hours later, Maya stood in the lobby of the Palmer House Hilton, watching her former life unfold in slow motion around her. The same faces, the same conversations, the same careful networking dance she'd once navigated with ease. But now she was invisible, a ghost haunting her own industry. Maya Lopez? The voice belonged to David Kim, a creative director she'd worked with on a campaign for a luxury skincare brand. His smile was genuine, which made what came next even more devastating. I heard you were taking some time off after. Well, after everything. How are you holding up? I'm doing well, she lied smoothly. Working on some new projects. David's expression shifted slightly, the way people's faces changed when they were about to deliver bad news wrapped in kindness. That's great to hear. I have to say, Ethan's been handling the transition really well. The rebrand of the agency, the new direction, it's impressive how he's managed to maintain the client relationships while putting his own stamp on everything. Maya felt the blood drain from her face. His own stamp? The Harper Creative Group, David continued, oblivious to the knife he was twisting. I love how he's finally getting the recognition he deserves. That campaign you two did for Zenith Wellness, the one that won the Silver Lion at Cannes, he presented it as a case study last month at the Creative Leadership Summit, really showed his range as a strategic thinker. The world tilted slightly. Maya gripped her clutch tighter, her nails digging into the leather. He presented it? Brilliant work, David said. I mean, we all knew he was the visionary behind your partnership, but seeing him own that creative process, explain the strategy from conception to execution, it was masterful. He's really found his voice without. David caught himself, his cheeks flushing. I mean, I'm sure you're proud of what you built together. Maya managed a smile that felt like glass cutting her face. Of course. If you'll excuse me, I see someone I need to speak with. She walked away on unsteady legs, David's words echoing in her mind. The visionary behind your partnership, his voice without. The campaign he'd presented, every concept, every strategic decision, every piece of copy had been hers. She'd worked 18-hour days for 3 months, living on coffee and determination, while Ethan schmoozing with clients and taking long lunch meetings. She'd presented the final strategy to the Zenith team herself, watched their faces light up as she walked them through the emotional journey she'd crafted for their brand. Now it was his masterpiece, his vision, his voice. Maya found herself in the bathroom, staring at her reflection in the marble-framed mirror. The woman looking back at her was thinner than she'd been 6 months ago, her cheekbones sharper, her eyes carrying a weight that hadn't been there before. But there was something else too, a clarity that hadn't existed when she'd been half of Maya and Ethan, when she'd been content to let him be the face while she was the brain. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found the name she was looking for, Jasmine Redding. Jazz had been their operations manager before the divorce, the steady hand that kept their agency running while Maya created and Ethan performed. She'd been quietly pushed out during the split, reassigned to smaller clients until she'd finally quit in frustration. The phone rang twice before Jazz's familiar voice answered. Well, look who's calling from the grave. Jazz. Maya's voice came out hoarser than she'd expected. Are you busy tonight? Depends. Are you calling to reminisce about the good old days, or to actually do something about this situation? Maya looked at herself in the mirror again, seeing something new in her reflection. I'm calling because I need help burning everything down. There was a pause, then Jazz's laugh, rich and knowing. Girl, I have been waiting for this call for 6 months. Where do you want to meet? An hour later, Maya sat across from Jazz, in a dive bar on the south side, far from the glittering towers of downtown where the gala was still in full swing. Jazz looked exactly the same, natural hair in perfect coils, confidence radiating from every pore, wearing a leather jacket that had probably cost more than Maya's rent. You look like hell, Jazz said, not unkindly, but also like you're finally awake. Maya took a sip of her whiskey, feeling it burn away the last of her politeness. He's erasing me, Jazz, not just from the agency, but from everything we built together. David Kim just told me Ethan presented the Zenith campaign as his own work, called him the visionary behind our partnership. The visionary, Jazz snorted. The man who couldn't tell the difference between brand strategy and brand guidelines if his life depended on it. The same man who once asked me if organic reach meant we were marketing to farmers. It's not just the credit. He's rewriting history, making it sound like I was some kind of creative assistant who got lucky being married to the boss. Maya's voice was getting stronger with each word. I built that agency. I built those campaigns. I built his reputation. And now he's using it to bury mine. Jazz leaned forward, her eyes intense. So what do you want to do about it? And don't tell me you're thinking about lawyers, because we both know that prenup was bulletproof. Maya stared into her drink, watching the amber liquid swirl. I want to build something better. Something that makes it impossible for him to pretend I never existed. Now you're talking. Jazz smiled, the same smile she'd worn during their most audacious campaigns. But we need to be smart about this. Ethan's got the client list, the office, the reputation. He's got everything, except the one thing that actually mattered, which is, he doesn't have you. Jazz signaled the bartender for another round. And more importantly, he doesn't have the people who know where the bodies are buried. People like me. People like the freelancers he stiffed. People like the junior creatives he ignored. People like Rachel Chen. Maya's pulse quickened. Rachel Chen was the marketing director at Zenith Wellness, one of their biggest clients. More than that, she was one of the smartest people Maya had ever worked with, someone who understood the difference between strategy and showmanship. Rachel knows, Maya said slowly. She was in every meeting. She saw who did the work. Rachel knows, Jazz confirmed. And she's not the only one. But they're all waiting to see what you're going to do next. Are you going to disappear quietly? Or are you going to remind them why they worked with Maya Lopez in the first place? Maya felt something shift inside her chest, like a door opening after being locked for months. I need to think about this strategically. If I'm going to compete with Ethan, I need to be smarter than him. I need to be better. You already are better, Jazz said. You just need to remember that. Maya pulled out her phone and opened her notes app, her fingers flying across the screen. First, I need to understand exactly what he's claiming as his work. I need documentation, proof of who created what and when. I might be able to help with that, Jazz said quietly. I kept copies of a lot of our project files. Called it insurance when I left. Second, I need to know which clients are actually happy with his leadership versus which ones are just tolerating it because they don't see another option. Rachel's not the only one who's been asking questions, Jazz offered. Word travels fast in this industry, and some people are starting to notice that the creative quality has shifted since the transition. Maya looked up from her phone, meeting Jazz's eyes. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying that if someone were to launch a boutique agency with the right team and the right approach, they might find that certain clients would be very interested in having a conversation. The bar around them faded into background noise. As Maya's mind began to work the way it hadn't in months, she could see the shape of it now, not just revenge, but resurrection. Not just burning down Ethan's empire, but building something better from the ashes. We'd need to be careful, she said. Ethan's not stupid. If he gets wind of this before we're ready, then we make sure we're ready before he knows what hit him. Jazz raised her glass. To Maya Lopez, the woman who's about to remind Chicago why she's the best strategist they've ever seen. Maya raised her own glass, feeling the weight of decision settle into her bones. To Maya Lopez, the woman who's about to become a problem Ethan Harper never saw coming. They drank, and in that moment, Maya felt herself transform. Not back into who she'd been. That woman was gone, dissolved in the acid of betrayal and loss. This was someone new, someone harder and smarter and infinitely more dangerous. Someone who understood that the best revenge wasn't destruction, it was creation. Someone who was going to build an empire. The coffee shop where Maya met Caleb Nario 3 days later was the kind of place that existed in the spaces between Chicago's gentrification, too hip for the old neighborhood, too authentic for the new money moving in. Maya arrived early, ordering a cortado and claiming a table in the back corner where she could watch the door. Jazz had vouched for Caleb, describing him as the guy who can find dirt in a clean room, but Maya had learned to be careful about who she trusted. Caleb turned out to be younger than she'd expected, maybe 30, with the kind of casual confidence that came from knowing you were good at something most people couldn't even understand. He wore a vintage band t-shirt under an expensive jacket, and his handshake was firm without being performative. Jazz says you need someone who can make computers tell the truth, he said, settling into the chair across from her. I'm good at that. I need to know if someone has been stealing my work and passing it off as their own, Maya said. But I need proof that would hold up in court, not just suspicions. Caleb pulled out a tablet and stylus, his movements precise and economical. Digital forensics isn't magic, but it's close. Every file has a fingerprint, creation dates, revision history, metadata. If someone's been copying your work, there's a trail. What do you need from me? Access to any devices or accounts you used during the time period in question. Email accounts, cloud storage, anything where you might have saved drafts or iterations of your work. He looked up from his tablet. Jazz mentioned this is about your ex-husband. Ex-husband and former business partner, Maya corrected. He's been presenting my campaigns as his own work, claiming credit for strategies I developed. I need to be able to prove that I was the original creator. Caleb nodded, making notes. Timeline? The past 3 years, but especially the last 18 months before our divorce. That's when we did our biggest campaigns, and those are the ones he's been showcasing. Jazz also mentioned you're planning to start competing with him directly. Maya hesitated, then decided on honesty. I'm planning to remind the industry who actually did the work. Good, Caleb said simply. I hate plagiarists. They give stealing a bad name. He looked up with a slight smile. That was a joke. I don't actually steal things. I just find them. 2 hours later, Maya sat in her mother's kitchen, watching Carmen Lopez roll out masa for tamales with the same precision she'd brought to every task for as long as Maya could remember. The kitchen smelled like cumin and comfort, a sharp contrast to the sterile efficiency of the apartment Maya had shared with Ethan. You look better, Carmen said, without looking up from her work. Thinner, but better. Like you're finally awake. Everyone keeps saying that, Maya said, accepting the cup of Kafkan lech her mother pressed into her hands. That I look awake. Because you were sleeping, Mija. For too long, you were sleeping. Carmen's hands never stopped moving, shaping masa into perfect circles. I tried to tell you, but you wouldn't listen. That man was making you smaller. Maya took a sip of coffee, tasting the cinnamon her mother always added. I thought I was building something with him. I thought we were partners. Partners don't make each other disappear. Carmen looked up then, her dark eyes holding the kind of wisdom that came from raising a daughter alone while working 3 jobs. Partners make each other stronger. That man was making you weaker so he could feel powerful. I'm going to destroy him, Mom. The words came out quietly, but with absolute certainty. Carmen paused in her work, studying her daughter's face. And what are you going to build? The question hung in the air between them, more complex than it seemed. Maya had spent the past weeks thinking about how to tear down what Ethan had taken from her, but her mother's question demanded something deeper. I'm going to build what we should have built in the first place, Maya said slowly. An agency that gives credit where it's due. That lifts up the people who do the work instead of the people who take the credit. Buno, Carmen said, returning. to her tamales. Destruction is easy, Mija. Any fool can tear something down. Building that takes intelligence. That takes character. That takes knowing who you are. Maya stayed for dinner, helping her mother finish the tamales, while Carmen told stories about her own struggles, starting over in a new country with a baby and no husband. The stories weren't new, but Maya heard them differently now, understanding. For the first time that her mother hadn't just survived, she'd created a life from nothing. You have something he doesn't, Carmen said as Maya prepared to leave. You have roots. You know where you come from. Men like him, they're all surface. When the surface cracks, there's nothing underneath. Maya hugged her mother, breathing in the familiar scent of her perfume, mixed with masa and ambition. I love you, Mom. I love you too, Mija. Now go show them what a Lopez woman can do. The next morning, Maya's phone rang at 7 a.m. Caleb's name appeared on the screen, and she answered on the second ring. You're going to want to see this, he said, without preamble. Can you meet me at my office? Caleb's office turned out to be a converted warehouse in Pilsen, the kind of space that housed artists and tech startups in equal measure. His setup was impressive: multiple monitors, servers humming quietly in the corner, and enough cables to power a small city. I've been digging through the metadata on those files you gave me access to, he said, pulling up a complex-looking spreadsheet on his main monitor. The good news is that you're right. Most of the work that's been attributed to your ex-husband was originally created by you. The bad news is that he's been very careful about covering his tracks. Maya leaned in closer, trying to make sense of the data. What does that mean? It means he's not just stealing credit, he's actively rewriting history. Look at this. Caleb highlighted a section of the spreadsheet. This is the metadata for the Zenith Wellness Campaign deck. The original was created on your laptop with your user account on March 15th of last year. But see this? He pointed to another entry. 3 months later, after your divorce was finalized, someone created a new version of the same file, same content, but with different author information. All the revision history pointing back to you was stripped out. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. He's been systematically erasing me from our work. It gets worse, Caleb said, pulling up another screen. I found similar patterns across dozens of files. Campaign strategies, client presentations, creative briefs, all of them showing the same pattern of historical revision. Is this legal? Legally, it's a gray area. If the work was done as part of a partnership or corporation, ownership can be complicated. But ethically, Caleb shook his head. It's fraud, professional fraud. Maya stared at the evidence spread across Caleb's monitors, feeling a mixture of vindication and fury. Can you prove this in a way that would be convincing to clients? To the industry? I can prove it to anyone who understands how digital forensics work, Caleb said. The question is whether that's the route you want to go. Exposing this kind of systematic plagiarism, it's going to be a big story. Are you ready for that kind of attention? Maya thought about her conversation with her mother, about destruction versus creation, about knowing who she was. I'm ready to tell the truth, but I want to do it strategically. I want to choose the moment and the method. Smart, Caleb said. In the meantime, I can keep digging. If he's done this with your work, he might be doing it with other people's too. Patterns like this tend to repeat. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Jazz. Call me. We need to talk about Rachel Chen. I have to go, Maya said, standing up. But Caleb, this is exactly what I needed. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, he said, already turning back to his monitors. Thank me when we've buried this guy so deep he needs a map to find his way back to the surface. 20 minutes later, Maya was back at the Southside coffee shop, where Jazz was waiting with teacups and a grin that could cut glass. Rachel Chen wants to have lunch with you, Jazz said without preamble. Today, downtown, just the two of you. Maya felt her pulse quicken. Did she say why? She said she has some questions about the direction of her account. Jazz's grin widened. Apparently, the new leadership at Harper Creative isn't quite meeting her expectations. Maya stared at her friend, understanding the implications. Rachel Chen wasn't just any client, she was Zenith Wellness's marketing director, one of the most influential voices in the wellness industry. If Rachel was having doubts about Ethan's leadership, this could be it, Maya said quietly. This could be the opening we need. Or it could be a trap, Jazz warned. Rachel's smart, but she's also careful. She's not going to make a move unless she's sure you're the better bet. Maya thought about the evidence Caleb had shown her, about the systematic erasure of her contributions, about the campaign that had been built on her strategy and presented as Ethan's vision. She thought about her mother's words. Partners make each other stronger. Set up the lunch, Maya said. It's time to remind Rachel Chen why she hired Maya Lopez in the first place. The restaurant Rachel had chosen was the kind of place where Chicago's power brokers came to conduct business over expertly prepared fish and wine that cost more per bottle than Maya's monthly rent. Maya arrived 5 minutes early, taking a moment to study her reflection in the glass doors. The navy blazer she'd bought at a consignment shop looked professional enough, and the confidence she'd been rebuilding over the past week felt solid beneath her ribs. Rachel Chen was already seated at a corner table, her silver hair cut in a sharp bob that framed her face like a weapon. She'd built Zenith Wellness from a small supplement company into a global brand worth $500 million, and she had the kind of presence that made seasoned executives nervous. Maya had always admired her directness. Maya, Rachel said, standing to embrace her, you look different, sharper somehow. Thank you for making time for this, Maya said, settling into her chair. I know your schedule is insane. Let's skip the pleasantries, Rachel said, signaling the waiter. I have 45 minutes before my next meeting, and I want to use them wisely. How are you really? Maya had prepared for this question, but Rachel's direct approach still caught her off guard. I'm rebuilding, taking time to figure out what comes next. And what does come next? The waiter appeared, and they ordered quickly, Rachel opting for the salmon, Maya choosing the quinoa salad she couldn't really afford but needed to order to maintain appearances. When they were alone again, Maya took a breath and made her choice. I'm starting my own agency, she said, focused on brands that want authentic strategy, not just pretty presentations. Rachel's expression didn't change, but Maya caught the slight tightening around her eyes that indicated heightened attention. Interesting timing. How do you plan to compete with your former agency? They have quite a head start. Maya pulled out her tablet, opening the folder she'd prepared. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about that. About the work we did together and what it really looked like behind the scenes. She turned the tablet toward Rachel, showing a side-by-side comparison she'd created with Caleb's help. On the left was the original campaign strategy document, complete with metadata showing Maya as the creator. On the right was the version Ethan had presented at the Creative Leadership Summit, stripped of her authorship. Rachel studied the screen, her expression growing more serious. This is the Zenith campaign. The original strategy session was on March 15th, Maya said quietly. You and I spent 4 hours in your conference room, working through the emotional journey mapping that became the foundation of the entire campaign. Do you remember? Rachel's eyes flicked up from the tablet. I remember. We ordered Thai food. You drew the customer journey on my whiteboard, and I knew within the first 20 minutes that we'd found our strategic direction. Ethan wasn't in that meeting. No, he wasn't. Rachel leaned back in her chair, studying Maya's face. He was in Los Angeles, pitching the Henderson Group. You handled the entire strategy development for the first phase of our campaign. Maya felt her confidence growing. I need you to know that I'm not here to badmouth my former partner, but I also need you to know that the work you're paying for the strategy, the creative direction, the brand positioning, that's my work. And I can prove it. She pulled up another document, this one showing the revision history of the campaign. Presentation. 3 months after our divorce was finalized, someone went through our shared files and systematically removed my name from everything. Not just the bylines, but the revision history, the comments, the collaborative elements that showed my involvement. Rachel was quiet for a long moment, studying the evidence. When she looked up, her expression was unreadable. Why are you showing me this? Because you deserve to know who you're actually working with, Maya said. And because I think you've already started to notice that something's changed in the quality of the strategic work coming out of Harper Creative. Rachel's slight smile confirmed Maya's suspicion. The Q3 campaign recommendations were disappointing. I'm not asking you to make any decisions today, Maya continued. But I wanted you to know that if you're looking for the kind of strategic thinking that built your brand, I'm still here. I'm still doing the work. I'm just doing it under my own name now. The waiter brought their food, and they ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Maya could practically see Rachel's mind working, analyzing the information she'd been given and weighing her options. Tell me about your new agency, Rachel said finally. What makes it different? Maya set down her fork, grateful for the opening. Transparency. Credit where credit is due. A collaborative approach that lifts up the entire team, not just the person whose name is on the door. I want to work with brands that understand the difference between strategy and showmanship. And you think Zenith falls into that category? I think Zenith is exactly the kind of brand that deserves better than repackaged strategies and borrowed ideas. Rachel laughed, a sound that held both amusement and something that might have been approval. You've gotten bolder, Maya. I like it. I've gotten clearer about who I am and what I'm worth. Good. Rachel signaled for the check. I have a proposal for you. Zenith is about to launch a new product line, plant-based adaptogens for stress management. We need a complete brand strategy, from positioning to creative direction to media planning. It's a 3-month project, and the budget is substantial. Maya's heart began to race, but she kept her expression neutral. I'd be very interested in hearing more about that. I'm sure you would. But here's the thing, I need to know that you can deliver the same quality of work without the infrastructure of a larger agency. I need to know that Maya Lopez, the independent strategist, is just as brilliant as Maya Lopez, the co-founder. More brilliant, Maya said without hesitation. Because now I don't have to spend half my time managing someone else's ego. Rachel stood, extending her hand. I'll send you the brief by the end of the week. You'll have 2 weeks to develop a preliminary strategy presentation. If I like what I see, the account is yours. Maya shook her hand, feeling the weight of opportunity and responsibility in equal measure. Thank you, Rachel. You won't regret this. I'd better not, Rachel said, but her smile was warm. Maya, that campaign we built together, the one that won at Cannes, that was some of the best strategic work I've ever been part of. Don't let anyone make you forget that. As Rachel walked away, Maya remained at the table, finishing her wine and processing what had just happened. The first domino had fallen, not just a client meeting, but a recognition of her worth, her capability, her right to exist in this industry on her own terms. She pulled out her phone and called Jazz. How did it go? Jazz answered on the first ring. She offered me the new product launch, Maya said, unable to keep the excitement out of her voice. 3 months, substantial budget. If I nail the pitch, Zenith is mine. Holy shit, Maya, that's huge. That's not just a client, that's a statement. When Rachel Chen moves her business, the whole industry pays attention. I know, Maya said, the magnitude of the opportunity starting to sink in. I need to be perfect. I need to be better than perfect. I need to be undeniably, unquestionably brilliant. You will be, Jazz said with absolute certainty. Because, this time, you're not sharing credit with anyone. This time, it's all you. Maya left the restaurant and walked the 20 blocks back to her apartment, needing the time to think and plan. The city moved around her, tourists and professionals, students and street musicians, but she was in her own world, already beginning to sketch out the framework for what could be the most important presentation of her career. By the time she reached her building, she had the bones of a strategy forming in her mind, not just for the Zenith pitch, but for everything that would come after. Rachel Chen was the first domino, but she wouldn't be the last. Maya could see the pattern now, the careful sequence of moves that would remind Chicago's marketing world exactly who Maya Lopez was and what she was capable of. She climbed the stairs to her studio apartment, pulled out her laptop, and began to write. Outside, the city hummed with ambition and possibility, and for the first time in months, Maya felt like she was part of it again, not as someone's assistant or someone's shadow, but as herself. Maya Lopez, strategist. Maya Lopez, business owner. Maya Lopez, the woman who was about to change everything. The warehouse space in West Loop had good bones beneath its industrial grime, exposed brick walls that spoke of Chicago's manufacturing past, floor-to-ceiling windows that flooded the space with natural light, and enough square footage to house an army of creatives without feeling cramped. Maya stood in the center of the empty room, her footsteps echoing off the concrete floors, while the real estate agent waited by the entrance with barely concealed impatience. It's been vacant for 8 months, the agent said, consulting her tablet. Previous tenant was a tech startup that burned through their funding. The lease terms are flexible, and the landlord's motivated. Maya walked to the windows, looking out at the Chicago skyline rising in the distance. 3 weeks had passed since her lunch with Rachel Chen, and the Zenith brief had arrived exactly when promised, a comprehensive document outlining the most ambitious product launch in the company's history. Plant-based adaptogens for stress management, targeting millennial and Gen Z consumers who valued both wellness and authenticity. The kind of project that could define a career. But she couldn't do it alone, and she couldn't do it from her studio apartment. What's the minimum lease term? Maya asked, pulling out her phone to take photos of the space. 12 months, but we could probably negotiate something shorter if you're concerned about commitment. Maya almost laughed. After everything she'd been through, a lease commitment was the least of her worries. 12 months is fine. When could we move in? 2 hours later, Maya sat across from Jazz in their new headquarters, surrounded by the detritus of furniture assembly, cardboard boxes, scattered screws, and the manual for a conference table that had defeated them both. Jazz had arrived with a team of freelancers Maya barely remembered from the old agency days, people who'd been overlooked or underutilized when Ethan was making staffing decisions. Introducing the core team of Lopez Strategy, Jazz announced, gesturing dramatically at the 3 people perched on various boxes and half-assembled chairs. We've got Marcus Rodriguez, who Ethan thought was too experimental for client-facing creative work. Marcus waved from his position on an overturned filing cabinet. He was younger than Maya remembered, maybe 26, with the kind of artistic intensity that made clients either fall in love instantly or run screaming. His portfolio was filled with campaigns that pushed boundaries and made people think. Priya Patel, who somehow never got promoted despite being the most organized human being in Chicago, Jazz continued. Priya looked up from the laptop where she was already building project management systems for clients they didn't have yet. I prefer strategically detailed, she said, with a smile that suggested she'd been waiting for this opportunity longer than anyone realized. And Chen Wei, who speaks 5 languages and understands digital marketing better than people half his age. Chen nodded politely from where he was setting up what appeared to be an elaborate social media monitoring system. At 50-something, he'd been dismissed by Ethan as not fitting the agency culture code for being too old and not white enough for the image Ethan wanted to project. This is it? Maya asked, looking around at her tiny team. 4 people. And whatever's left of my savings account. 5 people, Jazz corrected. You're forgetting our secret weapon. Caleb? Caleb, who, by the way, has some interesting news about our friend Ethan's recent business practices. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Caleb. Can you meet tonight? Found something you need to see. Later, Maya said, putting her phone away. Right now, I need to focus on the Zenith pitch. Everything else depends on nailing this presentation. She pulled out the brief Rachel had sent, spreading the pages. Across their newly assembled conference table, plant-based adaptogens. Target demographic is 25-40, college-educated, values-driven consumers who are skeptical of traditional wellness marketing but hungry for products that actually work. Marcus leaned in, studying the product specifications. So we're not going with the usual wellness industry aesthetic? No white backgrounds and floating ingredients? God, no, Maya said. Rachel's too smart for that. She wants something that feels authentic to this generation. Something that acknowledges their stress without condescending to it. Priya was already taking notes on her laptop. What's our timeline? Presentation is in 10 days. We need brand positioning, creative direction, media strategy, and a sample campaign that shows Rachel exactly what we can do. 10 days. Chen repeated thoughtfully. That's aggressive, even for a small team. It has to be perfect, Maya said. This isn't just about winning one client. This is about proving that we exist. That we're not just the ghost of Harper Creative, but something entirely new. Jazz stood up, clapping her hands together. All right, people, time to show this city what a real creative agency looks like. Marcus, I want you thinking visual identity. Priya, competitive analysis and positioning strategy. Chen, digital landscape and media planning. I'll handle operations and make sure we don't die of caffeine poisoning. What about me? Maya asked. You, Jazz said with a grin, get to do what you do best. You get to think. That evening, Maya met Caleb at a coffee shop in Lincoln Park, far enough from downtown to avoid anyone from the industry, but close enough to feel like they were still part of the city's creative pulse. Caleb looked more serious than usual, his laptop bag bulging with equipment she didn't recognize. "I've been monitoring Harper Creative's digital footprint," he said without preamble, pulling out a tablet and several printed documents. "Websites, social media, internal communications that aren't as private as they think they are. And your ex-husband is getting sloppy. Desperate, maybe. He's been reaching out to your old contacts, trying to poach clients from agencies that might be vulnerable to a better offer." Maya frowned. "That's pretty standard business development." "It would be, except he's using your work to make his pitches." Caleb turned the tablet toward her, showing a presentation deck she recognized. "This is the strategy framework you developed for the Morrison Hotels campaign." He presented it to 3 different prospects last week, claiming it as proprietary Harper Creative methodology. Maya felt the familiar surge of anger, but this time it was coupled with something else: strategic thinking. "He's recycling my old work because he can't create new work at the same level." "Exactly. And it gets better." Caleb pulled up another document. "I've been tracking his team's output since the divorce. Campaign quality is down, client satisfaction scores are dropping, and he's lost 2 major accounts in the past month." "Which accounts?" "Morrison Hotels, they didn't renew their annual contract. And Stellar Fitness just announced they're conducting an agency review." Maya leaned back in her chair, processing the information. "He's not just stealing my past work. He's struggling without my current input." "The man's drowning," Caleb confirmed. "And instead of learning to swim, he's grabbing onto pieces of your old life rafts." "This could work in our favor," Maya said slowly. "If he's using recycled strategies, if the work quality is declining." "Clients notice," Caleb finished. "And clients talk." Maya's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Maya, this is Greg Mendez from Harper Creative. Could we meet for coffee? There are some things I think you should know." She showed the message to Caleb, who raised an eyebrow. "Ethan's assistant?" "Executive assistant," Maya corrected absently, her mind racing. "He's been with Ethan for 3 years. He knows where all the bodies are buried. This could be a trap, or it could be an opportunity." Maya looked at the message again, noting the formal tone and the careful wording. "Greg's ambitious. If he thinks Ethan's ship is sinking, he might be looking for a lifeboat." She typed back quickly. "Tomorrow, p.m. Metropolis Coffee on Granville. Come alone." The next morning, Maya arrived at the warehouse to find her team already deep in work mode. Marcus had transformed one wall into a massive mood board, filled with images that captured the aesthetic they were developing for Zenith Urban Gardens: diverse faces, products integrated into real life rather than floating in sterile white space. "We're calling it Honest Wellness," Priya announced, looking up from her laptop. "Positioning that acknowledges stress as a fact of modern life, not a personal failing." Maya studied the mood board, feeling something click into place in her mind. "Show me the consumer journey you've mapped out." Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Priya pulled up a complex flowchart on her screen. Discovery happens through social media and word of mouth. Research phase involves skeptical evaluation. This generation doesn't trust easy promises. Trial phase needs to feel low risk but high value. Loyalty builds through actual results and community connection. And the creative concept. Marcus stood up, clearly excited. "Instead of promising to eliminate stress, we acknowledge it. The tagline is stress happens. Adapt stronger." We show real people dealing with real situations: job interviews, relationship challenges, family pressure, and using Zenith products as tools, not miracles. Maya felt her strategic mind engaging fully for the first time in months. "Media strategy?" Chen looked up from his bank of monitors. "Focus digital. Instagram and TikTok for awareness, but not the usual influencer partnerships. We want micro-influencers with authentic audiences. People who actually live the lifestyle we're promoting." Budget allocation? 60% digital, 30% experiential pop-up events, samples at yoga studios and co-working spaces, 10% traditional, but only in publications that align with our values. Maya walked around the conference table, studying the work her team had produced in less than 24 hours. It was good. Better than good. It was the kind of strategic thinking that won awards and built careers. "There's one more element we need," she said finally. "We need to position this not just as a product launch, but as a new way of thinking." about wellness marketing. Rachel's smart enough to see the bigger picture. She's not just buying a campaign, she's buying a philosophy. What kind of philosophy? Jazz asked. Maya turned to face her team, feeling the full weight of what they were building together. Transparency, authenticity, credit where credit is due. Everything we do should be the opposite of the smoke and mirrors approach that dominates this industry. That afternoon, Maya sat across from Greg Mendez in the coffee shop, studying the man who'd been Ethan's right hand for 3 years. Greg was impeccably dressed, as always, but there was something different about his energy and nervous intensity that suggested he was operating outside his comfort zone. "Thank you for meeting with me," he said, ordering an elaborate coffee drink that took the barista several minutes to prepare. "I wasn't sure you'd want to see me." "I'm curious," Maya said simply. "What do you want to talk about?" Greg looked around the coffee shop, confirming they were out of earshot of other patrons. "Ethan doesn't know I'm here. He can't know I'm here, okay? Things at the agency are challenging right now. The transition hasn't been as smooth as he'd hoped." Maya sipped her coffee, waiting for him to continue. "I've been with Ethan for 3 years," Greg said. "I thought I knew what kind of businessman he was, but lately," he trailed off, then pulled out his phone. "I've been documenting some things that concern me. From an ethical standpoint." He showed her a series of screenshots, emails, internal documents, meeting notes. Maya recognized some of the content immediately. "These are my campaign strategies," she said quietly. He's been presenting them as new work to prospects, to current clients, even in industry presentations. He had me create new templates with his name as the sole strategist. Maya felt her pulse quicken, but kept her expression neutral. "Why are you telling me this?" Greg set down his phone, meeting her eyes directly. "Because I don't want to be complicit in fraud. And because I think you should know that he's planning something." "What kind of something?" "He's heard rumors about you starting your own agency. He's been asking me to research your activities, your potential clients, your financial situation." Greg's voice dropped lower. "He's not just worried about competition, Maya. He's worried about exposure." Maya leaned forward slightly. "What do you mean?" "He knows you have evidence of his appropriation of your work. He's been consulting with lawyers about damage control, about how to discredit you if you go public." The coffee shop suddenly felt too warm, too exposed. Maya looked around, cataloging exits and potential escape routes, an old habit from her marriage that apparently hadn't faded. "Why should I trust you?" she asked. Greg smiled ruefully. "Because I just committed career suicide by having this conversation. Because I have copies of documents that prove everything I'm telling you. And because I think what he did to you was wrong." He pulled out a flash drive, setting it on the table between them. "Everything's on there. Email chains, financial records, client communications. Enough to prove that he's been systematically stealing credit for your work." Maya stared at the flash drive, understanding that this was a moment that would define everything that came next. "What do you want in return?" "A job," Greg said simply. "When you're ready to hire an operations manager who knows where Ethan's weaknesses are. Someone who understands how to run an agency without compromising ethics." Maya picked up the flash drive, feeling its weight in her palm. "I'll be in touch." That evening, back at the warehouse, Maya plugged Greg's flash drive into Caleb's secure laptop while her team worked around them. The files painted a picture of systematic deception that went far beyond what she'd imagined. Not just stolen credit, but fabricated client testimonials, inflated success metrics, and a pattern of billing practices that bordered on fraudulent. "This is enough to destroy him," Caleb said quietly, scrolling through the financial documents. "Not just professionally, legally." "That's not what I want," Maya said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "I don't want to destroy him. I want to build something better." Jazz looked up from the Zenith presentation she was refining. "Those aren't mutually exclusive goals." "Maybe not," Maya agreed, "but I need to stay focused on what matters. The Zenith pitch is in 6 days. Everything else can wait." She turned to her team, spread out across their unconventional office space, working on something that could change all of their careers. "We're not just competing with Harper Creative. We're creating an alternative to everything that agency represents. We're showing the industry what it looks like when the people who do the work get the credit." Marcus looked up from his sketches. "No pressure or anything." Maya laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. "No pressure at all. We're just about to prove that Maya Lopez never needed Ethan Harper to be brilliant." She just needed to stop sharing credit. The LinkedIn post went live at a.m. on a Tuesday, when Maya knew the marketing world would be drinking their first cups of coffee and scrolling through their feeds before the day's chaos began. She'd written and rewritten it a dozen times, finally, settling on a tone that was personal without being confessional, honest without being bitter. 6 months ago, I lost everything I thought defined me: my marriage, my business, my identity as half of a creative partnership. Today, I'm launching Lopez strategy with a simple belief: the people who do the work should get the credit. Our first campaign launches next week for a client who values authenticity over ego. To everyone who's ever had their contributions minimized or erased, this is for you. Hashtag behind the brand, hashtag authentic strategy, hashtag credit where credit is due. She hit publish and immediately closed her laptop, not wanting to watch the metrics in real time. The warehouse around her was quiet. Her team wouldn't arrive for another hour, but Maya had been there since dawn, putting the finishing touches on the Zenith presentation that would determine everything. Her phone started buzzing almost immediately. Comments, shares, direct messages from people across the industry. By the time Jazz arrived with coffee and pastries, the post had been shared 200 times. "Look at you, being all vulnerable and strategic at the same time," Jazz said, setting a cortado next to Maya's laptop. "Very on brand for the new you." Maya opened her laptop cautiously, scanning the comments that had accumulated. Most were supportive fellow creatives sharing their own stories of stolen credit, colleagues from her Harper Creative days offering encouragement. But there were others too, subtle digs and passive-aggressive questions that suggested Ethan's influence was still strong in certain circles. 24 hours until the Zenith presentation, Maya said, closing the social media tabs. "Are we ready?" "We're more than ready," Jazz said confidently. "We're about to blow Rachel Chen's mind." The presentation was scheduled for a.m. the next day at Zenith's headquarters in the West Loop. Maya had insisted on presenting at their office, rather than her own space, partly because the warehouse still looked more like a construction site than a professional agency, but mostly because she wanted Rachel to see her team in action on neutral ground. Marcus arrived next, carrying a portfolio case that contained the visual elements of their campaign. "I've been thinking about the opening," he said, pulling out foam core boards that showed their creative concept. "We need to hook her in the first 30 seconds. "Show me," Maya said. Marcus propped up the first board, revealing a stark black background with white text. "This is not another wellness campaign." The second board showed the tagline they'd developed: "Stress happens. Adapt stronger." The third revealed their sample creative: real people in genuine moments of stress, using Zenith products not as magic solutions but as tools for resilience. "The opening line is, 'Rachel, we know you're tired of wellness campaigns that promise to eliminate stress,'" Marcus explained. "Because you're too smart to believe in fairy tales, and your customers are too informed to buy them." Maya felt a smile building on her face. "That's perfect. It positions us as truth tellers in an industry built on impossible promises." Priya and Chen arrived together, laden with printed materials and tablets containing their media strategy and budget breakdowns. The next hour was spent rehearsing, timing each section of the presentation and anticipating Rachel's likely questions. "Remember," Maya said as they packed up their materials, "this isn't just about winning a client. This is about proving that our approach, transparency, authenticity, giving credit where it's due, actually works better than the alternative." That afternoon, Maya's phone rang with a call from an unknown Chicago number. She almost let it go to voicemail, but something made her answer. "Maya Lopez?" The voice was unfamiliar, professional. "This is Maya. My name is Jennifer Walsh. I'm a reporter with Chicago Business Journal. I'm working on a story about transparency in the marketing industry, particularly around creative credit and attribution. Your LinkedIn post has generated quite a bit of discussion." Maya felt her stomach drop. "I'm not sure I'm the right person for that story. Actually, I think you might be exactly the right person. I've been investigating some patterns in the industry, instances where creative work has been misattributed or where the actual strategists behind successful campaigns have been written out of the narrative. Your situation appears to be part of a larger trend." Maya sat down heavily in one of the warehouse's folding chairs. "What kind of story are you writing?" "One that asks whether the industry's focus on celebrity creative directors and star founders is obscuring the contributions of the people who actually do the work. I'd like to talk to you about your experience at Harper Creative, if you're willing." Maya looked around the warehouse, at the mood boards and strategy documents scattered across every surface, at the evidence of what she and her team had built in just a few weeks. Can I think about it? Of course. But Maya, the story's happening, with or without your participation. Your former business partner has already declined to comment, but I have sources who are willing to discuss the pattern of credit misattribution that occurred during your partnership. After Maya hung up, she called Caleb immediately. Someone's been talking to reporters, she said, without preamble. About what specifically? About Ethan stealing credit for my work. A Chicago Business Journal reporter just called me for comment on a story about transparency in the marketing industry. Caleb was quiet for a moment. This could be good, or very bad, depending on how you handle it. I have the Zenith presentation tomorrow morning. I can't afford to be distracted by a media circus. Then don't be distracted. Do the presentation, nail it, and then decide how you want to engage with the story. But Maya, if this reporter has sources and documentation, the story's coming out regardless. You might want to make sure your side of it is told accurately. That evening, Maya sat in her studio apartment, staring at the Zenith presentation deck on her laptop screen. Every slide was perfect, every transition smooth, every argument compelling. They'd created something that was genuinely innovative, not just a campaign, but a new way of thinking about how brands could connect with consumers who valued authenticity over aspiration. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rachel Chen, looking forward to tomorrow's presentation. Fair warning, I'm bringing my entire marketing team. They're excited to see what you've put together. Maya typed back, we're ready. Thank you for this opportunity. But as she prepared for bed, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that tomorrow would be about more than just winning a client. The reporter's call had reminded her that her story was part of something bigger, a reckoning within an industry that had always been better at selling dreams than acknowledging the dreamers who created them. The next morning, Maya arrived at Zenith's headquarters 30 minutes early, her team trailing behind her with their presentation materials and the nervous energy of people who knew they were about to prove themselves. The building was sleek, glass and steel, the kind of corporate environment that could either intimidate or inspire, depending on how prepared you felt. Rachel met them in the lobby, looking every inch the executive who'd built a $500 million company from scratch. Maya, I'm glad you're here early. I want you to know that word is already getting around about your new agency. People are paying attention. Good or bad attention? Maya asked. Both, Rachel said with a slight smile. The best kind. They were led to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River. Rachel's marketing team was already assembled, 6 people Maya recognized from their previous collaborations, all of whom had worked with her during the original Zenith campaigns. Before we begin, Rachel said, settling into her chair at the head of the table, I want to address something. There's been some industry chatter about Lopez strategy, about what it represents and why it exists. I want you all to know that I invited Maya here because I believe in her strategic thinking, her creative vision, and her ability to deliver results. Everything else is just noise. Maya felt a surge of gratitude and respect for Rachel's directness. It was exactly the kind of leadership that had built Zenith into the company it was today. Thank you, Maya said. We're here to show you something new, not just a campaign, but a philosophy about how brands can connect with consumers who value authenticity over perfection. She nodded to Marcus, who dimmed the lights and pulled up their opening slide. This is not another wellness campaign. For the next 45 minutes, Maya and her team walked through their strategy with the precision and passion of people who discovered something they truly believed in. They showed how traditional wellness marketing had created impossible standards and unrealistic promises. They demonstrated how their approach acknowledged stress as a universal human experience rather than a personal failing. They outlined a media strategy that prioritized genuine connections over superficial reach. When they finished, the room was quiet for a long moment. Maya could feel her heart beating against her ribs, could sense her team's nervous energy beside her. Rachel was the first to speak. Questions? The marketing team had dozens about implementation timelines, budget allocation, competitive positioning, measurement metrics. Maya and her team answered each one with the thoroughness and confidence that came from having done the work, not just presented it. Finally, Rachel stood up. Maya, could I have a word with you privately? They stepped out onto the building's rooftop terrace. Chicago spread out below them like a promise. The October air was crisp, carrying the scent of The changing season. That was exceptional, Rachel said. Not just the strategy, but the thinking behind it. The understanding that our customers are too smart for the usual wellness industry bullshit. Maya felt relief flood through her. Thank you. I'm giving you the account, Rachel continued. Full budget, 3-month timeline, with an option to extend if the results match the promise. Rachel, I can't tell you what this means, but there's something else, Rachel interrupted. I got a call this morning from a reporter at Chicago Business Journal. She's working on a story about creative attribution in the marketing industry, about how the people who actually do the work often don't get the credit. Maya's stomach clenched. What did you tell her? I told her the truth. That the Zenith campaigns that have won awards and driven revenue growth were strategically conceived and creatively directed by Maya Lopez. That if she wants to understand what happens when talented people don't get appropriate recognition, she should look at what happened during your partnership with Harper Creative. Maya stared at Rachel, understanding the full implications of what she was saying. You went on the record. I went on the record, Rachel confirmed. Because I believe that transparency isn't just good for business, it's necessary for the industry to evolve. And because I think it's time for people to know who really built the campaigns they've been admiring. As they rode the elevator back down to the lobby, Maya felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. Not just because she'd won the account. That would establish Lopez's strategy as a legitimate competitor, but because the story was about to become bigger than just her personal revenge against Ethan Harper. The industry was about to have a conversation about credit, attribution, and the invisible labor that built the campaigns everyone celebrated. And Maya Lopez was about to be at the center of it all. Outside Zenith's headquarters, her team waited. On the sidewalk, their faces expectant and nervous. Maya walked toward them, feeling the weight of victory and responsibility in equal measure. We got it, she said simply. The cheer that went up from her small team echoed off the glass and steel around them, and for a moment, Maya allowed herself to feel purely triumphant. They'd done it. They'd proven that Maya Lopez didn't need Ethan Harper's name or infrastructure to create something exceptional. But as she looked at her team, Jazz grinning with pride, Marcus already sketching ideas for the campaign launch, Priya making notes about implementation timelines, Chen calculating media reach on his phone, Maya knew this was just the beginning. The real work was about to start, and the whole industry was about to be watching. The article went live at I'm on Thursday morning, and Maya's phone started buzzing before she'd even finished her first cup of coffee. The headline read, The Ghost in the Machine, How Creative Credit Disappears in Chicago's Marketing World. Jennifer Walsh had written 1,200 words that methodically dismantled the mythology surrounding Harper Creative's recent success, with Rachel Chen and 3 other industry sources going on record about Maya's role in campaigns that had been publicly attributed to Ethan alone. Maya sat in her warehouse office, reading the article for the 3rd time while her team gathered around the conference table with their laptops and the nervous energy of people who knew their world was about to change. The piece was thorough and damning, using financial records and metadata analysis. Clearly, Caleb had been one of Walsh's sources to demonstrate a pattern of systematic credit theft that went beyond mere oversight. This is good for us, right? Marcus asked, scrolling through the comments section on his phone. I mean, it's validation of everything we've been saying about transparency and giving credit where it's due. It's complicated, Maya said, closing her laptop. Yes, it validates our position, but it also means Ethan's going to come out swinging. He can't let this narrative take hold without fighting back. Jazz looked up from her phone, her expression grim. Speaking of fighting back, you need to see this. She turned her phone toward Maya, showing an Instagram story from Ava Harper. Ethan's sister had posted a series of carefully curated slides, professional headshots, screenshots of industry accolades, testimonials from clients, all building toward a narrative that painted Maya as an unstable ex-wife seeking to destroy her former partner's career. The length some people will go to for attention, Ava's caption read, Success requires grace, not grievance. #truth wins, #women supporting women, #moving forward. Maya felt her jaw clench as she scrolled through the deliberately crafted posts. Ava had always been skilled at social media manipulation, but this was a masterclass in passive-aggressive character assassination. Each slide was technically supportive of women in business while subtly undermining Maya's credibility and emotional stability. She's good, Priya said grudgingly. Evil, but good. This is exactly the kind of narrative that makes people question whether you're a legitimate businesswoman or just a bitter ex-wife. Maya's phone rang before she could respond. Ethan's name appeared on the screen, and for a moment she considered letting it go to voicemail. But something made her answer. Maya. His voice was tight with controlled anger. We need to talk. Do we? That article is defamatory. It's based on stolen documents and testimony from disgruntled former employees. My lawyers are already preparing a response. Maya put the phone on speaker so her team could hear. Are you calling to threaten me, Ethan? I'm calling to give you a chance to back down gracefully before this gets ugly. You're embarrassing yourself, and you're damaging the reputation of an agency that we built together. An agency that you stole from me, Maya said calmly. An agency that you've been systematically erasing me from since the day our divorce was finalized. You're having some kind of breakdown, Maya. Everyone can see it. The desperate social media posts, the pathetic attempt to compete with an established agency, and now this hit piece based on fabricated evidence. You need help. Maya felt her team's eyes on her, watching how she would handle Ethan's attempt to gaslight her in real time. She thought about her mother's words about men who made women smaller, about Jazz's insistence that she was finally awake, about Rachel Chen's faith in her strategic vision. You're right about one thing, Maya said. I do need help. I need help understanding how someone can steal 3 years of another person's work and still sleep at night. I need help comprehending how a man can systematically erase his partner's contributions and then call her unstable when she fights back. Maya, I'm not done. Her voice was steel now, carrying the authority she'd spent months rebuilding. Here's what's going to happen, Ethan. I'm going to continue building my agency. I'm going to continue working with clients who value authenticity over ego. And every time you try to take credit for work you didn't do, every time you try to rewrite our history, I'm going to be there with receipts. She hung up before he could respond, her heart pounding but her hands steady. Her team was staring at her with expressions ranging from admiration to concern. Well, Jazz said finally, that felt definitive. The next few hours brought a steady stream of responses to the Chicago Business Journal article. Industry colleagues reached out with support, potential clients inquired about Lopez Strategies services, and several other publications requested interviews about the broader issues of creative attribution and gender dynamics in the marketing world. But there were also the responses Maya had been dreading. A carefully worded statement from Harper Creative questioning the article's sources and methodology. A LinkedIn post from a prominent creative director suggesting that professional disputes should be handled privately, not in the press. Several subtle digs from industry figures who'd always been more loyal to Ethan's networking prowess than to the quality of the work itself. By noon, Maya realized that the narrative war was fully engaged. It wasn't enough to have the truth on her side, she needed to control how that truth was presented and interpreted. I need to see my mother, she announced, standing up from the conference table where they'd been monitoring the industry's response all morning. Now? Jazz asked. Maya, we're in crisis management mode. We need to be strategic about how we respond to Ethan's pushback. This is strategy, Maya said, grabbing her jacket. I need to remember who I am before I decide how to fight. Carmen Lopez was in her garden when Maya arrived, tending to the late-season vegetables that somehow thrived despite Chicago's unpredictable weather. Her mother had always possessed an almost mystical ability to make things grow in hostile conditions. And watching her work among the tomato plants and winter squash, Maya felt some of her anxiety ease. Mija, Carmen said without looking up from the soil. You look like someone who's been fighting a war. I have been. Maya settled onto the back steps, breathing in the familiar sense of earth and growing things. It's getting ugly, Mom. Ethan's trying to make me look crazy, unstable. His sister's posting things on social media that make it sound like I'm just a bitter ex-wife who can't move on. Carmen wiped her hands on her gardening apron and came to sit beside her daughter. And what do you think? I think I'm not crazy. I think I have every right to be angry about what he did. But I also think, Maya trailed off, searching for the right words. You think maybe you're becoming something you don't recognize, Carmen finished. Something harder than you want to be. Maya nodded, feeling the tears she'd been holding back all morning finally threatening to spill over. I don't want to be the kind of person who destroys other people, even when they deserve it. But I also can't let him get away with stealing my work and making me disappear. Carmen was quiet for a long moment, studying her daughter's face with the intensity that had always made Maya feel simultaneously seen and protected. You know what the difference is between destruction and justice? What? Destruction is about making someone smaller. Justice is about making sure the truth doesn't disappear. Carmen stood up, brushing dirt from her hands. Your ex-husband, he made you smaller so he could feel bigger. That's destruction. You showing the world who really did the work, that's justice. But what if I become just like him? What if I get so focused on winning that I lose sight of why I started this? Carmen smiled, the kind of smile that had sustained Maya through childhood disappointments and adolescent heartbreaks. Mija, you could never become like him. You know why? Why? Because you're asking the question. Because you care about becoming something better, not just about destroying something else. That's the difference between you and him. Maya hugged her mother, breathing in the scent of garden soil and unconditional love. I love you, Mom. I love you too, Mija. Now go show them what a Lopez woman looks like when she's fighting for justice. Back at the warehouse, Maya found her team in full damage control mode. Priya had created a comprehensive social media monitoring dashboard, tracking every mention of Lopez strategy, Harper Creative, and the various industry figures weighing in on the controversy. Chen was analyzing the tone and reach of different posts, identifying which narratives were gaining traction. Marcus had started sketching ideas for a visual response campaign that could help control their messaging. Where do we stand? Maya asked, settling back into her chair at the conference table. Mixed. Jazz said honestly. The industry veterans mostly support you, especially the women who've had similar experiences with credit theft. The younger crowd is split. Some see you as a feminist hero. Others think this is unprofessional drama that reflects badly on the industry. And clients? 3 new inquiries since the article went live, Priya reported, but also one existing prospect who's now reconsidering their timeline for agency selection. Maya nodded, processing the information. What about Ethan's response strategy? He's being smart about it, Chen said, pulling up Harper Creative's social media feeds. No direct attacks, no obvious lies, just subtle messaging about professional integrity and letting the work speak for itself. Classic high road positioning. That makes you look petty by comparison. Maya studied the post. Chen was showing her carefully crafted content that managed to be both supportive of women in business and subtly dismissive of Maya's claims. It was masterfully done, the kind of strategic messaging that Ethan had always excelled at when his reputation was on the line. He's also been reaching out to mutual contacts, Jazz added, planting seeds about your emotional state, your decision-making capacity. Nothing actionable, just enough doubt to make people question whether you're thinking clearly. Maya felt the familiar anger rising in her chest, but this time it was coupled with something else: strategic clarity. She could see the shape of Ethan's counterattack now, could anticipate his next moves, and she could also see how to neutralize them. Call Greg, she said to Jazz. Tell him I want to meet tonight. And Caleb, I need him to start documenting everything we discussed. Every piece of evidence, every timeline, every connection between Ethan's current claims and the actual facts. What are you thinking? Marcus asked. Maya looked around at her team, these people who'd believed in her vision enough to risk their own careers on an untested agency. I'm thinking it's time to stop playing defense. It's time to show the industry exactly what Ethan Harper looks like when you strip away the presentation skills and marketing charm. That evening, Maya met Greg at a quiet restaurant in Andersonville, far from the downtown corridors where they might be recognized by industry colleagues. Greg looked nervous but determined, the expression of someone who'd already committed to a course of action and was seeing it through despite his fears. Ethan's panicking, he said without preamble, sliding a manila envelope across the table. The article spooked him more than he's letting on publicly. He's been making calls all day, trying to control the narrative. Maya opened the envelope, finding printed emails and internal documents that painted a picture of desperate damage control. Ethan reaching out to clients with carefully crafted explanations of the misunderstandings in the Chicago Business Journal piece. Conversations with industry contacts designed to position Maya as an unstable ex-wife rather than a legitimate competitor. This is exactly what I expected, Maya said, studying the documents. But it's also exactly what I need to prove that. He's more concerned with protecting his image than with telling the truth. There's something else, Greg said, lowering his voice, even though the restaurant was nearly empty. He's planning something bigger, a comprehensive counter-narrative that positions him as the victim of a vindictive ex-wife. Press interviews, industry testimonials, maybe even legal action for defamation. Maya felt her stomach clench. Timeline? Soon. He's moving fast because he knows the longer this story stays in the news cycle without his version dominating, the more damage it does to his reputation. Maya looked across the table at Greg, seeing something in his expression that she recognized the look of someone who'd finally understood the true nature of the person they'd been working for. Why are you helping me? Greg was quiet for a moment, stirring his coffee absently. Because I realize that I've been complicit in something that goes against everything I believe about fairness and professional integrity. Because I've watched him take credit for other people's work for 3 years, and I told myself it was just business. And because I think you deserve a chance to tell your story before he buries it under his version of events. Maya reached across the table, squeezing Greg's hand briefly. Thank you for all of this, for risking your career to do the right thing. What are you going to do with the information? Maya looked down at the documents spread between them, evidence of panic, manipulation, and the kind of strategic dishonesty that had defined her marriage and professional partnership with Ethan Harper. I'm going to make sure the truth doesn't disappear, just like my mother taught me. The video call with Caleb began at midnight, when Maya knew the warehouse would be empty and secure. She'd spent the evening reviewing Greg's documents and cross-referencing them with the digital evidence Caleb had been accumulating for weeks. Now, sitting in the glow of her laptop screen with the city lights of Chicago stretching out beyond the warehouse windows, she felt the strange calm that came with perfect clarity of purpose. I've been mapping Ethan's response strategy, Caleb said, his multiple monitors visible in the background of their video call. He's being systematic about it, reaching out to clients, industry contacts, and media outlets with a coordinated message. Show me, Maya said, pulling up her own notes on the documents Greg had provided. Caleb shared his screen, revealing a complex flowchart that tracked Ethan's communications over the past 24 hours. Phone calls to major clients, emails to industry publications, and social media engagement that looked casual but followed a clear strategic pattern. He's not just defending himself, Caleb explained. He's actively trying to reframe the entire narrative. The story becomes successful businessman targeted by unstable ex-wife instead of creative professional reclaims stolen work. Maya studied the patterns Caleb had identified, seeing the sophisticated media manipulation that Ethan had always excelled at. What about his sister's social media campaign? Ava's been busy, Caleb said, pulling up a different screen. She's been subtly coordinating with several influencers and industry figures to amplify the bitter ex-wife narrative. Look at this. He showed Maya a series of Instagram stories and LinkedIn posts from people in their extended professional network, all seemingly independent responses to the Chicago Business Journal article, but all hitting the same talking points about professional integrity, private disputes, and the dangers of airing personal grievances in public. This is coordinated, Maya said, recognizing the strategic messaging discipline she'd once helped Ethan develop for client campaigns. Absolutely. And it's working. The narrative is shifting from creative credit theft to messy divorce drama. If this continues for another few days, your professional credibility could be permanently damaged. Maya leaned back in her chair, processing the scope of the challenge she was facing. Ethan wasn't just defending himself, he was deploying the full arsenal of skills they developed together during their partnership, using her own strategic frameworks to destroy her reputation. What about the other evidence we have? She asked. The metadata, the financial records, the patterns of systematic plagiarism. It's bulletproof from a technical standpoint, Caleb said. But technical accuracy doesn't matter if the audience has already decided you're not credible. We need to change the conversation before the evidence becomes irrelevant. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Rachel Chen. Saw the social media chatter. Are you okay? Do you need any support from Zenith's side? She typed back quickly. I'm fine. Focused on delivering excellent work for you. Everything else is noise. Rachel's response came immediately. It's not noise if it's affecting your ability to operate. Let me know if there's anything I can do. Maya showed the exchange to Caleb, who nodded approvingly. That's good. You need allies with credibility, speaking up for you, people who can vouch for your work quality and professional behavior. What about going on the offensive? Maya asked. We have enough evidence to prove Ethan's been systematically stealing credit for years. We could expose that instead of just defending against his attacks." Caleb was quiet for a moment, considering. "That's risky. If you're seen as escalating the conflict, it reinforces the narrative that this is personal vendetta rather than professional accountability." Maya stood up, pacing to the warehouse windows and looking out at the city where her career had been built and nearly destroyed. "So what do you recommend?" "Strategic patience," Caleb said. "Let him overplay his hand. Document everything he's doing, but don't respond directly. Instead, focus on demonstrating your capabilities through your work. Let the results speak for themselves. That could take months, maybe years, or it could take days if he makes a mistake." And Maya, men like Ethan always make mistakes when they're panicking. The next morning brought news that confirmed Caleb's prediction. Maya arrived at the warehouse to find Jazz already there, coffee in hand and laptop open to a news website. "You need to see this," Jazz said, turning her screen toward Maya. The headline read, "Marketing Executive Threatens Legal Action Against Investigative Report." The article detailed Ethan's legal team's demand that the Chicago Business Journal retract its story about creative credit theft, claiming defamation and threatening litigation against both the publication and its sources. "He's suing?" Maya asked, reading through the legal language in the cease and desist letter that had been shared with the reporter. "Threatening to sue," Jazz corrected, "which is almost worse. It makes him look powerful and you look like you can't defend your position." Maya's phone rang. Jennifer Walsh, the Chicago Business Journal reporter who'd written the original article. "Maya, I need to talk to you about Harper Creative's legal response," Jennifer said when Maya answered. "They're demanding a retraction and threatening litigation. Do you have any comment? Are you planning to retract the story?" Maya asked. "Absolutely not. We stand by our reporting. But I want to give you a chance to respond to their claims that you provided fabricated documents and testimony." Maya felt her jaw clench. "The documents are authentic, and every source you spoke to can be verified. If Ethan Harper wants to challenge the accuracy of your reporting, he's welcome to provide evidence that contradicts our claims. Can I quote you on that?" Maya paused, understanding that her next words would either escalate or de-escalate the entire situation. "You can quote me saying that I have complete confidence in the integrity of your reporting and the authenticity of the evidence presented. If Mr. Harper believes otherwise, I invite him to present his own documentation of the work attribution he claims." After ending the call, Maya found her team gathered around the conference table, their expressions ranging from supportive to concerned. "Boss," Marcus said carefully, "are you sure you want to keep pushing this? Legal threats are serious business." "He can't sue me for telling the truth," Maya said, with more confidence than she felt. "And he can't sue the Chicago Business Journal for reporting facts. But he can make your life expensive and complicated," Priya pointed out. "Legal fees, depositions, months of uncertainty while your business is trying to get off the ground." Maya looked around at her team, these people who'd followed her into an uncertain venture based on nothing more than faith in her vision and their shared commitment to doing work they could be proud of. "Are you having second thoughts?" "Hell, no," Jazz said immediately. "I'm just making sure you understand what you're signing up for." "I understand," Maya said. "I understand that Ethan is desperate enough to threaten legal action because he knows the truth is damaging to his reputation. I understand that he's counting on me to back down rather than face the cost and uncertainty of a legal fight. And I understand that if I back down now, he wins permanently." Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Maya, this is David Kim from Stellar Creative. Can we talk? There are some things about the Harper Creative situation that I think you should know." Maya showed the message to her team. David Kim was the creative director she'd run into at the marketing gala months ago, the one who'd inadvertently told her about Ethan's presentation of her work as his own vision. "Take the meeting," Jazz advised. "Information is power, and right now we need all the power we can get." 2 hours later, Maya sat across from David Kim in the same coffee shop where she'd first met with Caleb. David looked nervous but determined, the expression of someone who'd been wrestling with his conscience and finally reached a decision. "I owe you an apology," he said, without preamble. "And an explanation." "For what?" "For not speaking up sooner about what I knew regarding the work attribution at Harper Creative." for letting you think I was just making casual conversation when I told you about Ethan's presentation, when I actually understood exactly what was happening. Maya felt her pulse quicken. What do you mean? David pulled out his phone, scrolling through saved screenshots. I've been documenting Ethan's presentations and client pitches for months. Not intentionally at first, I just save materials that inspire me or that I want to reference later. But when I started comparing his recent work to the campaigns you two did during your partnership, the patterns became obvious. He showed Maya a series of presentation slides, strategy documents, and creative briefs that she recognized immediately. Her work, presented by Ethan to prospects and clients, with all attribution to her systematically removed. Why didn't you say anything before now? Maya asked. Because I was a coward, David said simply. Because Ethan's well-connected and I didn't want to make an enemy of someone with that much influence in the industry. But after reading the Chicago Business Journal article, after seeing how he's responding to legitimate reporting about his practices, I realized I couldn't stay silent anymore. Maya studied the evidence David had collected, seeing months of systematic plagiarism documented in meticulous detail. Are you willing to go on record about this? I am, David said. But there's something else you need to know. I'm not the only one who's been documenting this. There are at least 3 other creative directors who've been sharing information about Ethan's practices. The industry's smaller than people think. And when someone starts taking credit for work they didn't do, people notice. Who else? Sarah Martinez from Momentum Agency, Kevin Wu from Brand Forward, Lisa Thompson from Creative Collective. We've all seen presentations where Ethan claimed credit for strategies and creative concepts that were clearly developed by other people. Maya felt something shift in her understanding of the situation. This wasn't just about her stolen work, it was about a pattern of professional behavior that had affected multiple people across the industry. Would they be willing to speak publicly about this? They're already preparing a joint statement. David said, we're calling it the Creative Attribution Initiative, a formal call for industry standards around crediting strategic and creative work, with specific examples of best practices versus problematic behavior. Maya stared at David, understanding that the conversation had just shifted from personal vindication to industry reform. When? Tomorrow morning. We're releasing it through Ad Age and sending copies to the major trade publications. We wanted to give you advance notice because your situation is likely to be mentioned as a case study. Maya's phone rang before she could respond. Greg's name appeared on the screen, and she answered immediately. Maya, you need to know that Ethan's planning a major press offensive, Greg said, without preamble. Interviews, industry testimonials, the full charm offensive. He's scheduled to appear on the Marketing Leadership podcast tomorrow afternoon, and he's preparing talking points that position you as an unstable ex-wife who's trying to destroy his business out of spite. Maya looked across the table at David, then at her phone, where Greg was waiting for her response. The pieces of the larger picture were falling into place. Ethan's legal threats, his coordinated social media campaign, and now his planned media blitz, all designed to bury her credibility before the truth could take hold. When does the podcast record? She asked. 2 p.m. tomorrow. Maya, he's going to use his platform to systematically destroy your reputation. He's got talking points prepared that make you sound delusional. Maya made her decision. Greg, I need you to do something for me. Can you get me Ethan's complete client list? Everyone he's pitched in the past 6 months, everyone he's currently working with, everyone he's scheduled to present to in the coming weeks? I can do that. Why? Because it's time to stop playing defense, Maya said, meeting David's eyes across the table. It's time to make sure the truth doesn't disappear, even if Ethan tries to bury it under his version of events. After ending the call, Maya turned back to David. That creative attribution initiative you mentioned, how would you feel about accelerating the timeline? What do you have in mind? Maya smiled, feeling the strategic clarity that had always been her greatest strength. I have in mind showing the industry exactly what transparency looks like, and exactly what happens when someone tries to build a career on other people's work. The coordinated release began at a.m. Eastern Time to hit when the marketing industry would be starting their day with coffee and trade publication updates. Maya watched from her warehouse office as the Creative Attribution Initiative went live across multiple platforms simultaneously. Ad Age, Campaign Magazine, Marketing Land, and the social media feeds of 17 industry professionals who'd signed onto the statement. The initiative's manifesto was elegantly simple. Creative work deserves accurate attribution. Strategic thinking should be credited to its actual source. The industry's future depends on transparency, not star worship. But the accompanying case studies were devastating in their specificity, documenting patterns of misattribution that stretched across multiple agencies and involved dozens of campaigns. Harper Creative featured prominently in the examples with side-by-side comparisons showing original strategy documents created by Maya alongside presentations where Ethan had claimed sole credit for the same work. But the scope was broader than just their partnership. The initiative revealed an industry-wide problem of credit theft that particularly affected women and junior creatives. Phase 1 is live, Jazz announced, monitoring the social media response. From her laptop, reactions are already coming in, and they're strong. Maya nodded, checking her own feeds. The response was immediate and polarized, veteran creatives expressing gratitude that someone had finally addressed the attribution problem, while agency principals and executives pushed back against what they characterized as an attack on industry leadership. But Maya was watching for one response in particular, Ethan's. It came 20 minutes later, in the form of a carefully crafted LinkedIn post that managed to be both gracious and dismissive. "I applaud any effort to recognize the collaborative nature of creative work," Ethan had written. "Great campaigns are always team efforts, and I've always believed in celebrating the contributions of every team member. I look forward to supporting industry initiatives that promote fairness and transparency." "He's good," Marcus admitted, reading the post over Maya's shoulder. That response makes him sound reasonable and supportive while completely avoiding the specific allegations. "He's always been good at that," Maya said. But look at the comments. The comment thread below Ethan's post was where the real battle was being fought. Industry colleagues were pushing back directly, posting their own examples of creative misattribution and asking pointed questions about specific campaigns mentioned in the Creative Attribution Initiative. The conversation was becoming a public reckoning that Ethan couldn't control through charm and positioning. Maya's phone rang. Caleb's name appeared on the screen. "Phase 2 is ready to deploy," he said without preamble. "But are you sure you want to do this? Once we release the financial analysis, there's no going back." Maya looked around the warehouse at her team, all of whom had stopped their work to focus on the unfolding industry conversation. These people had believed in her vision enough to risk their careers on an untested agency. They deserved to know that she was willing to risk everything to protect what they were building together. "Deploy it," she said. 20 minutes later, a comprehensive financial analysis appeared on Maya's personal website, cross-posted to LinkedIn and Twitter with the hashtag transparency in action. Caleb had created a forensic breakdown of Harper Creative's client billings that showed a disturbing pattern. Campaigns strategically conceived and creatively directed by Maya during their partnership had generated significantly higher revenue and client satisfaction scores than work produced after her departure. The analysis included client retention data, campaign performance metrics, and award recognition, all publicly available information, but compiled in a way that revealed the stark difference between Maya's strategic thinking and Ethan's presentation skills. It was professional destruction by spreadsheet, devastating precisely because it was so objective and unemotional. "That's going to hurt," Jazz said, watching the shares and comments accumulate in real time. "You just proved that his business has been declining since you left, using his own client data." Maya felt a mixture of satisfaction and nervousness as the industry response accelerated. This wasn't just personal vindication anymore, it was a public demonstration of what happened when performance was separated from presentation, when actual results were measured against claimed achievements. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rachel Chen. "Saw the financial analysis. Impressive work. Also wanted you to know that we've had 3 inquiries this morning from other companies asking about Lopez strategy. Word is traveling fast." Maya typed back, "Thank you for the support. Focused on delivering excellent work for Zenith while the industry sorts this out." But the industry wasn't sorting anything out quietly. By noon, the Creative Attribution Initiative had been covered by every major marketing publication, with reporters reaching out to agencies across the country for comment on their own attribution practices. The conversation had evolved from Maya's personal situation into a broader examination of how the industry valued and credited creative work. That's when Ethan made his critical mistake. The Marketing Leadership podcast interview was scheduled for 2 p.m., but Ethan had clearly decided to accelerate his response timeline. At 1:30, he posted a video to LinkedIn, a direct-to-camera statement from his office that was obviously intended to be his definitive response to the morning's revelations. Maya and her team gathered around Jazz's laptop to watch as Ethan delivered what he'd clearly conceived as a masterful piece of crisis communication. He looked polished and confident, speaking directly to the camera with the kind of earnest sincerity that had always been his greatest professional asset. I want to address the allegations and insinuations that have been circulating about Harper Creative and my professional practices, Ethan began. As someone who's spent his career building collaborative relationships with talented creatives, I'm disappointed to see personal grievances presented as industry-wide issues. He went on to defend his record, emphasize his commitment to team collaboration, and position the morning's revelations as the work of disgruntled former employees seeking to damage his reputation. It was exactly the kind of response Maya had expected: measured, reasonable, and completely focused on protecting his image rather than addressing the specific evidence that had been presented. But then Ethan made the error that would define everything that followed. I want to be particularly clear about the financial analysis that was posted this morning, he said, his tone shifting slightly as he addressed Maya's data directly. The metrics being cited are incomplete and deliberately misleading. They fail to account for the transition period following my divorce, the strategic repositioning of the agency, and the natural evolution of our client relationships. More importantly, they reflect a fundamental misunderstanding of how agency success is measured and sustained. Maya felt her team's energy shift as they recognized what Ethan had just done. By attacking the financial analysis directly, by claiming the data was incomplete and misleading, he'd opened himself up to a much deeper examination of Harper Creative's actual performance metrics. "He just challenged you to prove your numbers," Caleb said, calling from his office across town. "And I have every piece of data we need to do exactly that." "What are you thinking?" Maya asked. "I'm thinking it's time to show the industry what complete and accurate financial analysis actually looks like. Client retention rates, campaign performance data, employee satisfaction scores, even agency profitability trends. Everything he just claimed you didn't have access to." Maya looked around at her team, seeing the same strategic excitement she was feeling. Ethan had just made the classical error of overconfident leaders. He'd challenged an opponent to provide evidence he assumed they couldn't possibly possess. "Do it," Maya said, "but make it comprehensive. I want every number, every metric, every data point that shows the difference between what Harper Creative was when I was there and what it became after I left." 2 hours later, a 40-page financial analysis appeared on Lopez Strategies' website, complete with interactive charts, client testimonials, and side-by-side comparisons of campaign performance before and after Maya's departure from Harper Creative. The document was titled "Complete and Accurate: A Comprehensive Analysis of Creative Attribution and Business Performance." It was devastating, not because it was vindictive or emotional, but because it was so thoroughly professional and objective. Caleb had created a forensic examination of Harper Creative's business performance that revealed declining client satisfaction, reduced campaign effectiveness, and falling revenue per client since Maya's departure. More damaging still, the analysis showed that several of Harper Creative's current clients had explicitly requested Maya's involvement in their campaigns, only to be told she was no longer available. The industry response was immediate and unforgiving. Within an hour, #complete and accurate was trending on Twitter, with marketing professionals sharing their own experiences of credit misattribution and calling for industry standards around transparent collaboration. But the most damaging response came from an unexpected source. At p.m., Ava Harper posted what appeared to be a casual Instagram story from her apartment, showing herself working on her laptop with a caption about busy day managing multiple brand partnerships. The image seemed innocuous until industry observers began noticing details in the background brand logos on her screen that corresponded to companies she'd claimed as organic partnerships, engagement metrics that suggested purchase followers rather than authentic audience growth. Maya was reviewing client proposals when Jazz called her attention to the social media analysis that was spreading across Twitter. Marketing professionals had begun scrutinizing Ava's influencer profile with the same forensic attention they'd brought to Harper Creative's business practices. "Look at this," Jazz said, pulling up a thread from a prominent social media analyst. "They're tearing apart Ava's engagement metrics. Fake followers, purchased comments, sponsored content that wasn't properly disclosed. The whole influencer facade is collapsing in real time." Maya studied the analysis, watching as months of carefully crafted online presence was systematically dismantled by industry professionals who understood exactly how authentic influence was built and maintained. Ava's attempt to position herself as a successful lifestyle influencer was being revealed as an elaborate construction of purchase metrics and undisclosed brand relationships. "This is collateral damage," Maya said, feeling an unexpected pang of something that might have been sympathy. "She got pulled into this because she tried to defend Ethan. She got pulled into this because she built her brand on lies," Jazz corrected, "just like her brother. The only difference is that her lies were about follower counts instead of creative attribution." Maya's phone rang. Greg's name appeared on the screen, and she answered immediately. "Maya, you need to know that Ethan's in full panic mode," Greg said, his voice tight with stress. "The podcast interview got canceled because the host didn't want to touch the controversy. 3 clients have called asking for clarification about campaign attribution, and Ava's having a complete meltdown about the social media analysis." "What's his next move?" "I don't think he has one," Greg said. "He's been making calls all afternoon, trying to find some way to control the narrative, but the story's gotten too big. It's not just about Harper Creative anymore, it's about industry standards and practices. He can't spin his way out of that." Maya looked around the warehouse at her team, all of whom had stopped their work to follow the real-time collapse of the reputation Ethan had spent years building. It was happening faster than she'd imagined possible, the careful edifice of his professional image cracking under the weight of evidence and industry scrutiny. "Greg," she said carefully, "I need you to know that there's a place for you at Lopez. Strategy when you're ready to make the transition, but I also need you to be safe. Don't do anything that puts you at risk professionally or legally." "I appreciate that," Greg said. "But Maya, I think the transition might happen sooner than expected. Ethan's talking about closing the agency. He's convinced that the damage to the brand is irreparable." Maya felt a shock of surprise that was immediately followed by something more complex, a mixture of vindication and genuine sadness for what had been lost. Harper Creative had been her professional home for 3 years, the place where she'd developed some of her best work and built relationships with clients she genuinely cared about. "What about the employees? The clients?" "That's what I'm worried about," Greg said. "Ethan's not thinking about anyone except himself right now. He's talking about liquidating assets and walking away, leaving everyone else to figure out their own transitions." Maya made a decision that surprised even her. "Greg, I want you to quietly reach out to the Harper Creative team, the junior creatives, the account managers, anyone who might be looking for a soft landing. Tell them that Lopez strategy is growing and we're interested in talking to talented people who value transparency and collaboration." "You want to hire his employees?" "I want to hire good people who deserve better than being abandoned by a boss who's more concerned with his image than with their careers," Maya said. "And I want to make sure Harper Creative's clients have options that don't involve watching their campaigns suffer while Ethan figures out his next career move." After ending the call, Maya turned to find her team staring at her with expressions ranging from admiration to concern. "Boss," Marcus said carefully, "are you sure you want to get involved in cleaning up Ethan's mess? We've got our own business to build." "This is building our business," Maya said. "The industry is watching how we handle this moment. We can either be the agency that destroyed a competitor, or we can be the agency that stepped up when talented people needed opportunities and clients needed solutions. That's assuming we can handle the growth," Priya pointed out practically. "We're still a 5-person operation working out of a warehouse. Taking on Harper Creative's displaced employees and abandoned clients would be a massive scaling challenge." Maya looked around the warehouse space, seeing not just what it was but what it could become. "Then we scale. We hire the right people. We lease more space. We build the infrastructure we need to do excellent work for more clients. We become the agency we always said we wanted to be." Jazz was pulling up financial projections on her laptop, running numbers for different growth scenarios. "It's doable," she said after a few minutes of calculation. "Aggressive, but doable. Especially if we can convert some of Harper Creative's existing client relationships." "What about Ethan?" Chen asked. "He's not going to just disappear quietly. Even if he closes Harper Creative, he's still got connections and reputation in the industry." Maya considered the question, thinking about the man she'd once loved and built a business with, who'd systematically erased her contributions and tried to destroy her credibility when she'd fought back. "Ethan will land somewhere. Men like him always do. But he'll never again be able to claim credit for work he didn't do, because the industry is watching now." The conversation about attribution and transparency isn't going away. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rachel Chen. "Saw the news about Harper Creative potentially closing. If you're taking on additional clients, Zenith has to subsidiary brands that could use strategic support. Interested in discussing expanded partnership?" Maya showed the message to her team, watching their faces light up with the kind of excitement that came with real opportunity. "This is it," she said. "This is the moment when we stop being the agency that survived Ethan Harper's betrayal and start being the agency that's building something better." That evening, as the industry continued to process the day's revelations and the implications for creative attribution standards, Maya stood alone in the warehouse space that had become the headquarters of Lopez Strategy. The city lights of Chicago stretched out beyond the windows, the same view she'd looked at months ago when she'd been broken and invisible, erased from her own professional history. Now she was building something new, not just an agency, but a different way of doing business. Not just revenge against someone who'd wronged her, but justice for everyone whose contributions had been minimized or erased. Her phone rang one final time. Ethan's name appeared on the screen, and after a moment's hesitation, she answered. "Maya." His voice was different than she'd ever heard it, stripped of confidence, hollow with the kind of exhaustion that came with watching everything you'd built collapse in a single day. "Ethan, I want you to know that I'm closing Harper Creative, effective immediately. I'll be reaching out to clients tomorrow to help them transition to other agencies." Maya was quiet, letting the weight of his words settle between them. "I need you to know that I never meant for things to get this ugly," he continued. "The agency, our marriage, the way everything ended, I know I made mistakes. You stole my work," Maya said quietly. "You systematically erased my contributions and then tried to destroy my reputation when I fought back. Those weren't mistakes, Ethan. Those were choices." "I know," he said, and for the first time in their conversation, his voice carried something that might have been genuine remorse. "I know, and I'm sorry. For what it's worth, I'm sorry." Maya looked out at the city lights, thinking about forgiveness and justice, about destruction and creation, about the difference between winning and building something worth having. "I'm sorry too," she said. Finally, "I'm sorry it took all of this for you to understand what you were doing. I'm sorry the industry had to watch our marriage and business partnership collapse in public. And I'm sorry that you chose to protect your image instead of protecting the people who worked for you." "Maya, but I'm not sorry that I fought back," she continued. "I'm not sorry that I refused to disappear. And I'm not sorry that the industry is finally having a conversation about giving credit where credit is due." The line was quiet for a long moment. "Take care of yourself, Ethan," Maya said. "And take care of the people who trusted you with their careers. They deserve better than being collateral damage in your professional collapse." She hung up before he could respond, setting her phone aside and looking out at the city that had become the backdrop for her resurrection. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: scaling her agency, supporting displaced employees, managing the media attention that came with being at the center of an industry-wide conversation about transparency and attribution. But tonight, Maya Lopez stood in the headquarters of the agency she'd built from nothing, surrounded by the evidence of what she'd accomplished when she stopped sharing credit and started claiming her own power. The fall of the House of Harper was complete. The rise of Lopez Strategy was just beginning. 6 weeks after the fall of Harper Creative, Maya stood in the expanded warehouse space that now housed Lopez Strategy's growing team of 12 employees. The exposed brick walls that had once echoed with the footsteps of 5 uncertain rebels now hummed with the energy of a legitimate agency. Conference calls with national clients, strategy sessions that stretched into the evening, and the kind of creative collaboration that happened when people felt valued for their actual contributions. The morning started with Maya's interview for Campaign magazine's cover story about the Creative Attribution Initiative and its impact on industry practices. The reporter, Sandra Kim, had arrived early to photograph the team in their unconventional workspace, capturing the energy of an agency that had built its reputation on transparency and authentic collaboration. "Tell me about the moment you decided to fight back," Sandra asked, settling into one of the conference room chairs that Maya's team had assembled from a furniture catalog and sheer determination. Maya looked around the space, seeing Marcus presenting campaign concepts to Priya and Chen, Jazz managing 3 client calls simultaneously, and the newest team members former Harper Creative employees who'd joined Lopez strategy during the industry upheaval integrating seamlessly into their collaborative culture. "I think I decided to fight back the moment I realized I'd been fighting the wrong battle," Maya said. "For months, I thought this was about getting revenge against my ex-husband, but it was really about refusing to disappear, about proving that the people who do the work deserve recognition for doing it." The Creative Attribution Initiative has been adopted by 17 agencies across the country, Sandra noted, consulting her research. Industry associations are developing formal guidelines around creative credit. "How does it feel to have sparked that kind of systemic change?" Maya considered the question, thinking about the emails she'd received from creatives across the industry, junior strategists who'd been inspired to speak up about their contributions, women who'd been marginalized by celebrity creative directors, people of color whose ideas had been appropriated and repackaged by their supervisors. "It feels like responsibility," she said finally. "When you become the catalyst for change, you have an obligation to make sure that change is meaningful and sustainable. It's not enough to expose problems, you have to build better solutions." Sandra nodded, making notes. Speaking of building solutions, Lopez strategy has grown from 5 employees to 12 in 6 weeks. That's aggressive scaling for any agency, but especially for one dealing with the kind of media attention you've received. "How are you managing that growth?" Maya smiled, thinking about the controlled chaos of the past month and a half. "Very carefully. We're not just hiring bodies, we're building a culture. Every person we bring on board has to understand that our success depends on everyone getting credit for their contributions. No rock stars, no ego-driven hierarchies, just good people doing excellent work and being recognized for it." The interview continued for another hour, covering everything from Lopez Strategy's client acquisition strategy to Maya's personal journey from devastated ex-wife to industry leader. When Sandra finally packed up her recording equipment and camera, Maya felt the strange satisfaction that came with telling her story completely and honestly, without the defensive posturing that had characterized her media interactions during the height of the Harper Creative controversy. After Sandra left, Maya found herself in the warehouse's small kitchen area, making coffee and watching her team work through the glass partition that separated the break space from the main office. It was a routine she'd developed over the past few weeks, a moment of quiet observation that helped her stay connected to the culture they were building together. "Deep thoughts?" Jez asked, appearing beside her with her own coffee mug. "Just thinking about how different this feels from what we had before," Maya said. "At Harper Creative, I was always focused on proving I belonged there, on justifying my contributions. Here, I'm focused on making sure everyone else knows they belong. That's the difference between working for someone else's vision and building your own," Jazz said. "You're not trying to fit into a structure someone else created. You're creating the structure." Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Saw the article preview online. "I'm proud of you, Mija. When do I get to see this famous warehouse?" Maya typed back, "Come for lunch today. I want you to meet the team." 2 hours later, Carmen Lopez walked through the warehouse space with the kind of quiet dignity that had always made Maya feel simultaneously protected and proud. She moved through the office like a diplomat, stopping to chat with each team member, asking thoughtful questions about their work, and offering the kind of genuine interest that made people feel seen and valued. "So this is what you built," Carmen said when Maya finally gave her the full tour, ending at the conference room windows that looked out over the Chicago skyline. "This is what we built," Maya corrected. "All of us together." Carmen studied her daughter's face, seeing something there that hadn't existed during Maya's marriage to Ethan. "You look like yourself again, but also like someone new." "I feel like someone new," Maya admitted. Someone who understands the difference between being successful and being powerful. Success was what I had with Ethan: external recognition, financial stability, professional status. But I wasn't powerful because I wasn't in control of my own narrative. And now, Maya looked around the warehouse, at the evidence of what she'd built when she stopped sharing credit and started claiming her own power. Now I'm building something that makes other people powerful too. That's the difference. Carmen squeezed her daughter's hand. Your father would be proud. It was the first time her mother had mentioned Maya's father in years. The man who'd died when Maya was 8, leaving Carmen to raise her daughter alone while working multiple jobs to keep them afloat. Maya felt tears threatening, understanding that her mother's words carried the weight of generational struggle and triumph. I love you, Mom. I love you too, Mija. Now show me these famous tamales Jazz has been bragging about. The afternoon brought a steady stream of client calls and strategy sessions, the kind of focused work that had always been Maya's greatest strength. But now, instead of having to fight for credit or navigate around someone else's ego, she could focus entirely on solving problems and creating solutions that actually served her clients' needs. At 4 p.m., she had a video call with Rachel Chen to discuss the expansion of their Zenith partnership. The original adaptogens campaign had exceeded all performance targets, driving both brand awareness and direct sales beyond the most optimistic projections. Now, Rachel wanted to discuss applying Lopez Strategies' approach to Zenith's entire product portfolio. The results speak for themselves, Rachel said, sharing her screen to show engagement metrics and conversion data. But what I'm really excited about is the cultural shift we're seeing within our own marketing team. Your emphasis on collaborative attribution has changed how we approach internal project management. How so? Maya asked, genuinely curious about the ripple effects of their work. Our team members are more willing to share ideas because they know they'll get credit for their contributions. We're seeing more innovative thinking, better cross-departmental collaboration, and higher employee satisfaction scores. It turns out that when people feel valued for their actual work, they do better work. Maya smiled, understanding that this was the real victory, not just the collapse of Ethan's empire, but the creation of alternative approaches that actually worked better for everyone involved. We'd like to formalize an ongoing partnership, Rachel continued. Retainer-based relationship, quarterly strategy sessions, and first right of refusal on any new product launches. Are you interested? Maya looked around her office, calculating capacity and growth projections in her head. Very interested. Send over the proposal and we'll have an answer by the end of the week. After the call ended, Maya found herself alone in the warehouse as her team gradually wrapped up their workdays and headed home to their families and personal lives. She'd gotten into the habit of staying late, not because she needed to, but because she enjoyed the quiet time to process the day and plan for tomorrow. Her phone rang with a call from an unknown number. When she answered, the voice on the other end was hesitant but familiar. Maya, this is Greg. I wanted to let you know that I submitted my resignation to Ethan today. Maya felt a surge of satisfaction mixed with concern. How did he take it? About as well as expected. He's been in denial about the agency's situation, convinced that he can rebuild somehow. He wasn't happy to lose his last connection to institutional knowledge. What's your timeline? 2 weeks? I wanted to make sure all the client transitions were handled properly, that nobody got abandoned in the chaos. Greg paused. Is your offer still open? Maya had been expecting this call for weeks, ever since Greg had started sharing information about Harper Creative's internal operations. Absolutely. We could use someone with your operational experience, and we need someone who understands how to scale systems properly. I'd like to start Monday after next, if that works for you. Perfect. Greg, thank you for everything, for doing the right thing when it wasn't easy. Thank you for giving me a place to land where I can do work I'm proud of. That evening, Maya sat in her studio apartment, the same space where she'd planned her comeback 6 months ago, but which now felt more like a way station than a permanent home. She'd been looking at larger apartments, places with enough space for a home office and maybe even a guest room for when her mother visited. The financial stability to make that kind of decision still felt new and precious. She pulled out her laptop and began drafting an email that she'd been thinking about for weeks. It was addressed to Jennifer Walsh, the Chicago Business Journal reporter who'd written the original article about creative attribution in the marketing industry. Jennifer, she wrote, I wanted to thank you for your thorough and fair reporting. on the Creative Attribution Initiative and its impact on industry practices. Your work helped spark a conversation that was long overdue, and I'm grateful for your commitment to accurate, nuanced journalism. I'm writing now because I think there's a follow-up story worth exploring, not about what was torn down, but about what's being built in its place. Over the past 6 weeks, I've watched agencies across the country implement new practices around creative credit and collaborative recognition. I've seen talented people find new opportunities at companies that value their contributions. I've witnessed clients achieving better results because their agency partners are focused on solutions rather than self-promotion. The story isn't just about one failed partnership or one person's revenge. It's about an industry that's learning to value substance over celebrity, collaboration over ego, and authentic success over manufactured image. If you're interested in exploring how transparency and attribution are actually changing the way agencies operate, I'd be happy to connect you with clients, employees, and industry leaders who are part of this evolution. The real story isn't about the fall of Harper Creative, it's about what rises in its place. Maya reread the email twice before sending it, understanding that she was shifting the narrative one final time. Not from victim to victor, but from destroyer to creator. Not from someone who'd torn down a corrupt system, but from someone who was building a better alternative. 3 months later, Maya stood outside the building that had once housed Harper Creative, holding a small brass plaque and a screwdriver she'd borrowed from the building's maintenance staff. The space had been empty since Ethan closed the agency. Its floor-to-ceiling windows, now covered with leasing signs that promised premium office space in Chicago's premier creative district. She wasn't here for nostalgia or closure in the traditional sense. She was here because Carmen Lopez had asked her to come, had insisted that Maya needed to see the empty space where she'd once tried to make herself smaller to fit someone else's vision. It looks different when it's empty, her mother said, appearing beside her with the quiet presence that had always been her superpower. It looks honest, Maya replied, studying the bare walls and empty reception area. No more pretense. No more performance, just space waiting for something real to fill it. Carmen smiled, understanding exactly what her daughter meant. What does the plaque say? Maya looked down at the small brass rectangle in her hands, reading the words she'd had engraved the week before. Carmen Lopez, builder of dreams, mother of dreamers. I want to put it by the entrance, Maya said, not as a memorial, but as a marker. A reminder that the women who build things often don't get buildings named after them, but their influence lasts longer than any structure. Mija, you don't need to put my name on a building. I'm not putting it on a building, Maya said, moving toward the entrance. I'm putting it on the place where I learned the difference between fitting in and belonging, between being part of someone else's story and writing my own. She positioned the plaque next to the main entrance, using the borrowed screwdriver to secure it to the stone facade. It was small and easily missed unless you were looking for it, but it would be there for anyone who cared to notice, a quiet acknowledgement of the invisible labor that made all other accomplishments possible. There, Maya said, stepping back to admire her work. Now it's complete. They walked back to Maya's car, not the luxury sedan she'd shared with Ethan, but a practical hybrid that reflected her current priorities of sustainability and authenticity over status and performance. As they drove through downtown Chicago, toward the South Side restaurant where they'd planned to have lunch, Maya felt the satisfaction that came with closing a chapter definitively. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jazz. New client inquiry just came in. Tech startup wants to discuss brand strategy for their series launch. Mention they specifically sought us out because of our reputation for collaborative attribution. Maya showed the message to her mother, who read it with the kind of pride that made Maya feel 8 years old and invincible at the same time. How many employees now? Carmen asked. 15. We're moving to a bigger space next month, still in West Loop, but with proper conference rooms and a kitchen that doesn't require folding chairs. And you're happy? Maya considered the question as they stopped at a red light, watching pedestrians cross the intersection with the purposeful energy that defined Chicago's downtown core. I'm satisfied, she said finally. I'm doing work I believe in with people I respect. I'm solving problems instead of creating them. I'm building instead of destroying. That's not the same as being happy. Maya looked at her mother, seeing the woman who'd raised her to expect more from life than mere satisfaction, who'd modeled the kind of quiet strength that sustained families and communities across generations. I'm proud, Maya said. I'm proud of what we've built, proud of the people we've supported, proud of the changes we've helped create in the industry. And I think maybe pride is a more sustainable foundation than happiness anyway." Carmen reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand. "Pride is good, pride is earned, but don't forget to leave room for joy, Mija. You've spent so much time fighting and building that you might have forgotten how to simply enjoy what you've accomplished." That afternoon, after lunch with her mother, Maya returned to the Lopez strategy offices to find her team in the middle of their weekly all-hands meeting. She slipped in quietly, taking a seat in the back and listening as Marcus presented the creative concepts for their newest client, as Priya walked through project timelines and resource allocation, as Chen shared insights from their latest social media analytics. But what struck her most was the energy in the room, the kind of collaborative excitement that happened when everyone felt genuinely invested in the collective success. There were no hidden agendas, no competition for individual recognition, no careful navigation around someone else's ego. Just talented people working together to solve problems and create solutions. Maya, Jazz was looking at her expectantly. "Did you want to share the news about the industry recognition?" Maya stood up, feeling the attention of her entire team focus on her with the kind of respectful expectation that she'd never experienced during her partnership with Ethan. Ad Age called this morning. Lopez Strategy has been named to their list of agencies to watch for our work on transparent collaboration and authentic client partnerships. The cheer that went up from her team was genuine and shared, the celebration of people who understood that individual recognition reflected collective effort. Maya looked around the room at the faces of the people who'd believed in her vision enough to risk their careers on an untested agency, who'd helped her build something better than what she'd lost. But more importantly, she continued, "We've been asked to present our collaborative attribution model at the American Marketing Association's National Conference next month. They want us to lead a workshop on how transparency and credit sharing actually improve campaign results and team performance." Greg raised his hand from his position near the project management boards that now covered one entire wall. "Are we ready for that kind of industry visibility?" Maya smiled, thinking about how different this question felt from the defensive positioning she'd once had to maintain at Harper Creative. "We're ready because we have nothing to hide. Our success is built on actual results, not manufactured narratives. When you're telling the truth about your work and your process, industry visibility becomes an opportunity instead of a threat." After the meeting ended and her team gradually dispersed to their individual projects, Maya found herself alone in her office, a real office now, with a door and windows and space for the kind of strategic thinking that required both collaboration and solitude. She pulled out her laptop and began drafting an email that she'd been composing in her head for weeks. It was addressed to herself, a letter that would capture this moment before it became memory, before the urgency of growth and expansion made her forget what it had felt like to build something from nothing. "Dear Maya," she wrote, 6 months ago, you thought you'd lost everything that defined you. Your marriage, your business, your professional identity, all of it stripped away by someone who'd convinced you that your contributions were less valuable than his presentation of them. You were wrong about what you'd lost, and you were wrong about what defined you. You didn't lose your strategic thinking when you lost access to Harper Creative's client list. You didn't lose your creative vision when you lost the corner office and the title and the recognition. You didn't lose your ability to solve problems and build solutions when you lost the partnership that had become your professional identity. You lost the things that were never really yours to begin with: the external validation, the shared credit, the comfort of being part of someone else's success story. But you kept the things that actually mattered: your intelligence, your integrity, your commitment to doing work that makes a difference. What you built in the aftermath wasn't just a successful agency. You built a different way of working, a different way of valuing contributions, a different way of understanding what real collaboration looks like. You proved that transparency and authenticity aren't just moral imperatives, they're competitive advantages. The industry is watching now, not because they're waiting for you to fail, but because they want to understand how you succeeded, how you transformed personal betrayal into professional innovation, how you turned individual revenge into collective progress, how you built something better than what you lost. The name on the door isn't Harper Creative anymore. It isn't even Lopez Strategy, really. The name on the door is the principle you refuse to abandon, that the people who do the work should get credit for doing it, that success belongs to everyone who contributes to it, that building something sustainable requires foundation deeper than ego and ambition. You didn't just survive Ethan Harper's betrayal. You used it to become someone better than you were when you were trying to fit into his vision of success. You became someone who creates opportunities for other people instead of just taking credit for their contributions. You became Maya Lopez, not half of Maya and Ethan, not the woman behind the successful man, not the creative genius who let someone else be the face of her work. Just Maya Lopez, strategist and builder and leader and mother of dreams that actually come true. That's the name that belongs on the door. That's the name that will outlast any building or agency or professional partnership. That's the name that means something because you built something worthy of it. Keep building, Maya. The industry needs what you're creating, and the world needs more people who understand the difference between taking credit and earning it. She saved the letter in a folder labeled Foundations and closed her laptop, looking out the window at the Chicago skyline that had been the backdrop for both her destruction and her resurrection. The city looked different now, not like a place where she'd been diminished and erased, but like a place where she'd learned to claim her own power. Maya Lopez, CEO of Lopez Strategy. Maya Lopez, catalyst for industry change. Maya Lopez, the woman who'd refused to disappear. The woman whose name belonged on the door because she'd built something worthy of it. Outside, Chicago hummed with ambition and possibility, and Maya Lopez was finally, authentically, undeniably part of it. Not as someone's shadow or someone's supporting character, but as herself, complete, powerful, and unafraid. The name on the door was exactly where it belonged. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.